The mountains went on further than the eye could see. Goliath blades of rock jutting out from the earth, frosted white with Russian snow. The car was pulled up on the side of the road, the back seats packed with whatever stuff Nina and I had been able to pick up during our travels. The kid was sat on a grassy patch, taking in the view as I planned out our route. I didn't have any real objective other than staying alive and out of trouble. The gang that was after Nina hadn't bothered us since all that business at the motel went down, but that in no way meant that we were in the clear. Not by a long shot. Whoever hired the gang was still out there, and there was always the risk of the Karashi call, the strange telepathic pull which draws members of Nina's species together. The strange pull which, for no obvious reason, affects me too. With all this danger on the horizon, I had to make sure we were prepared. Nina would have to learn to protect herself. I placed an empty can in the grass and put the pressure gun in her hands. I decided that if she had to learn to fight, the pressure gun was her best bet. Firstly, because it was a Karashi weapon, and secondly, because it had the added benefit of producing very little gore. She was still a kid after all. Carefully, I placed my hands on hers and aimed the gun at the can. We stood like that for a while, just helping her get a feel for the thing. Trust me, I didn't enjoy teaching a kid to kill, but one day she might not have any other option. The people out there, the clinic, as they call themselves, have some sort of odd fascination with the Karashi. They were the ones who armed the gang's leader with the pressure gun. They probably were the reason those children were sent to Earth and taken away to God knows where. If I hadn't been there, Nina would have been taken too. What the hell did a so-called clinic want with high-tech weapons and alien children? What sort of medical group hires the goddamn Chinese mafia to do their dirty work? Over the last month, those two questions have been riding my 24-hour mental subway service, sitting in the same carriages. What am I doing here? Who am I? And what the hell do I do now? Nina gave the trigger a light squeeze and the can crumpled. She was a natural. Not sure if that's a good thing. I left her to it and went back to the maps. The road had been empty for miles and our stops were so rare, so I had to make the most of this opportunity. My breath hung thick and foggy, like cigarette smoke in the cold air. Somewhere out in the mountains, there was a distant, guttural roar. Nina rushed over to me and tugged on my shirt to get my attention. Her face was flushed with a panicked red. "Don't worry, kid. It's probably just a tree falling or something." She tugged harder and pointed. A sheet was falling down the mountains, impossibly fast, and the purest white. It engulfed everything it passed over. It was a fucking avalanche! "In the car," I demanded. "Come on, Nina, in the car!" I pushed the vehicle to its limits. The engine screamed under the pressure. The whole time, that fatal force raced closer. Everything I was doing was in vain. I didn't care. I wouldn't sit back and let us both die. Even when the world threatened to swallow us whole, I'd keep fighting. I had to get my answers. Had to take the kids somewhere safe. Had to find out who I am. But I suppose Mother Nature doesn't care about that, does she? The sweeping tide enveloped the car, consuming us completely. We were taken with it, and there wasn't anything I could do. All was black. I felt Nina take my hand. Then, nothing. I still felt the cold in my dream. My body was still freezing under tones of ice, but my mind was somewhere else. Somewhere years ago when I still remembered who I was. The world, as it often is in dreams, was fluid. Everything around me flowed like amber whiskey, and my God, it was brilliant. I was surrounded by filth. A filthy alleyway, a filthy bar, a filthy house. I'm not sure. It wasn't a great place, but I felt amazing. Something was coursing through me. Some kind of chemical joy. But that didn't last long. It never did. I needed to get back there, to wherever that filthy, wonderful place was. I'd do anything to get there. I felt a sickness within me. Deep, starving sickness. It was then that I saw my mother's face. The whiskey world seemed to trickle out of her. She was a fountain. Ma? I stepped towards her, my footsteps causing the faintest of ripples. She flung her hands over her eyes. Was it fear? Self-protection? Disgust? Ma? It's me. It's Stacy. Please, Ma, just look at me. With each step, ripples grew. I wasn't just disturbing the water now, I was causing vast waves. The sloshing torrents tossed me from side to side. I struggled against the rising tide. The liquid reached my throat, then my nose. I was drowning, and still my mother couldn't bear to look at me. What the hell had I done? It was just a dream, right? The part of me that could still recall the answers was sliced out and carefully extracted. I was inserted back in to replace it. I awoke more comfortable than I had been in years. I had to double-check that I wasn't still dreaming. Or dead. I wasn't either of those, which was swell by me, but besides that, I didn't have a single clue as to where I was or why I was there. Shifting slightly, I felt silk beneath my skin. The sheets of a large 4-poster bed sat in the center of a lavishly decorated bedroom. Nina was in the room with me too, already awake and making her way through a box of dark chocolates which had been left for us. Nestled in the box was a note that simply read, "Welcome, Elle." The corridor outside the room was plastered with noxious red wallpaper. Whilst the area directly outside the room was lit, the rest of the hallway was in darkness. Nina scampered out. "Wait a second, kid. Don't go exploring just yet. I need to be sure that we're safe." "Oh, don't worry," said a thickly accented voice. "You are perfectly safe." The rest of the lights switched on, revealing a strange labyrinth of red corridors. And a woman. "Where are we?" I asked. The woman smiled. Her pale face looked alien amongst her coal-colored uniform and jet-black hair. "You are safe. The avalanche took place on my employer land. Since you were caught up in it, he saw your safety as his concern." "And who exactly is your employer?" "That would be Mr. Petrov. Leonid Petrov." Leonid Petrov. I'd heard the name before. Banker, billionaire, oligarch. What would he be doing in the middle of the Russian wilderness? Assuming that was still where we were.
"My name is Ivanka. I will take care of you two during your stay. Could I take your names?"
Suzanne Barry. Thought it was safer to use a pseudonym. We could still be targets. "And what are you called?" Ivanka leaned down to Nina. The kid obviously didn't say anything back, just stared at her intently like she could see something I couldn't. "She a bit shy, huh?" Ivanka remarked. "Sure."
"Well, it's almost time for supper. I'm sure you both starving. If you would just follow me, please."
The moment I tried to walk, I collapsed into the wall.
"The doctor said that happened, Miss Barry. You were out there in cold for a long time. It was bound to have some effect on your health. Don't worry. Just grab my arms and I will lead you to the dining hall."
"I'm fine. I'll be fine," I dismissed. Entering the dining hall gave me a better understanding of where exactly I was. We were in some sort of modern mansion, a vast complex somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. The hall itself was at the top of the building. Walls of glass allowed me to see just how trapped I was. The foreboding expanse threatened me. If I got out, it wouldn't let me survive a second time. Nina helped me down onto a seat, scared that I'd fall again, I guess. She didn't seem to be suffering from any of the aftershocks of the avalanche. The Karashi possessed this nifty trick of being able to instantly heal from pretty much everything. The food was already laid out for us. A fat, luxurious banquet. I didn't stop Nina from helping herself. Ivanka looked at the kid with mild amusement before scurrying off to open the door.
Didn't anyone tell you that it's rude to start eating before everyone sit down?
Chuckled Leonid as he entered. He was a portly, elderly man dressed in a fine suit the same color as his wallpapers. Following behind him was a slender, spectacled man with a pair of strangely stained gloves poking out of his pocket. I am joking, of course, Leonid continued.
I see both are finally awake. It has been a few days.
Thank you for keeping us safe. We'll be leaving as soon as possible.
No, there is no rush. No rush at all. You must stay. I insist. You need to make full recovery before leaving. Isn't that right, Dr. Gorend?
The spectacled man nodded in response. Something I picked up on was the fact that he never fully closed his mouth. It's just one of those quirks people have, but something about it just stuck with me. Whenever you looked at him, you always saw his teeth first.
See? You must stay. Doctor's orders.
Leonid continued. I am going to go some treatment myself. That is why the doctor is here. You are welcome to stay as long you need. Ivanka will look after you and the doctor will be on call 24/7. Gorant grimaced at the statement before burying his expression. I imagine it was being buried beneath a pretty big paycheck. Well, Mr. Petrov? Leonid, please. Okay then, Leonid. I can't tell you how grateful we are for your hospitality. I also couldn't tell him how desperate I was to get out of it.
You and your daughter were harmed on my property. Therefore, it is my responsibility to make sure you get better. Do not let the media fool you. I am philanthropist at heart.
I didn't bother correcting him on the daughter thing. It only built up on my disguise. Nita grasped the bottom of my shirt and nodded towards the doctor, the bottom of her lip quivering. I patted her lightly, letting her know that I picked up on her concern. The kid had a knack for sensing out danger. I'd have to keep an eye on this Garant character. The doctor excused himself after Ivanka cleared up the dishes. I got up to leave, but it turned out that Mr. Petrov had other plans. Suzanne, wait, he said. I looked at him, letting slip a hint of discomfort. Ivanka will take your daughter to her room. She will be fine. Why don't you stay in here for a while? Only seem right that we should get to know each other. Nina glanced at me as Ivanka approached her. I tried my best to subtly assure the kid as she was taken away. So, Leonid, where do you want to start? I asked, sitting back down at the table.
Where to start? That is a good question. I want to understand you, Suzanne. I want to know what makes you tick. That is just the type of man I am. I want to know you intimately.
Tell me, do you believe in destiny?
He said wistfully,
placing a cigar in his mouth. Talk about laying it on thick. I'm sure this was a routine he's used many times, but since I was in his care, I had to do my best to stay in his good books. I had to humor him. Yet another reason to get out of this place. I don't know, I said. I never used to. Recently, I found out that a very special type of person can be drawn to others like them. I'm not sure if it really counts as destiny, though. I'm guessing you do. Leonid chortled. His wrinkled features contorted into a vast, toothless smile.
Oh, yes. Yes, I believe in destiny. Some things are just meant to happen. I mean, look at this situation we're in. You needed someone to save you? My security was there. You needed someone to heal you. Dr. Gorant is just downstairs. Do you need someone to care for you? I am here. Is that not destiny?
I suppressed an instinctual cringe. Talking about here, where exactly are we?
This?
Leonid gestured with a trembling hand.
This is my retreat. My life tiring, you know. When I need to get away, I come here. I like being alone. Just me and my staff. Usually there are more of them, but this time I only brought Ivanka and my security.
I wanted privacy. So you could have whatever treatment Garant is giving you in secret, right? Leonid took the cigar from his lips and stubbed it out on the table, leaving an ashy mound on the clear glass. Thin streams of smoke created a slight haze around the man.
You have daughter, Suzanne. That mean you have a husband?
Shit. No. I don't have a husband. His eyes gleamed with hungry satisfaction.
Good. I think we are going to be close friends. You and I. Very close. Make the most of your time here. If you play your cards right, I can make you very comfortable indeed.
He struggled out of his seat and grasped my hand. Slowly and shakily, he brought his lips to my skin. The stench of tobacco was sickening.
Good night, Suzanne.
He walked off somewhere deep into the belly of the complex. I was alone again. I had to put up with him, just for the time being. I had to do what was best for me, for the kid too, just until I could escape. I tried getting up myself, but my body didn't seem to be willing. I plummeted back into my seat. Eventually, Ivanka returned and led me away. As she almost always does, Nina woke up first. The meaningless gibbering of some kid's cartoon hoisted me into the waking world. She wasn't a human child, but she sure as hell acted like one. Turn it off. It's 3 a.m, I mumbled. She stuck her hand in the air and displayed 5 fingers. She was correcting me. It was 5 a.m. I lightly tossed a pillow at her, exciting a small giggle from the girl. I knew there was no point trying to battle her, so I tried to blot out the babbling and get a few more hours rest. Just as my mind began to drift away again, I felt an overwhelming pull in the center of my head. The call of the Karashi. One of the alien children that had been sent down with Nina was standing in the doorway, illuminated in the static technicolor of the TV screen. Their eyes glinted silvery white. Maybe it was after revenge. That would be reasonable. I could have stepped in to rescue them, just like I did with Nina, but I didn't. Too busy protecting myself. I blinked once and the doorway was empty again. I blinked once more and I was asleep. We had breakfast in a small study. Leonid and Dr. Garant were nowhere to be seen, although Mr. Petrov had sent down a box of old toys for Nina and a bouquet of roses for me. We stayed in the study after finishing our food. I'm ashamed to admit I was enjoying myself. Despite being part of an expensive modern compound, the room had been styled as if it were within a log cabin. I suppose this was meant to be a place Leonid could go if he was feeling nostalgic. "Can I get you anything else?" offered Ivanka. "No, I think we're okay, thanks." "If that is the case, I will be off then." I lifted my hand. "It wouldn't be too much hassle if you stayed, would it?" Truth be told, I wanted all the company I could get. I was still a bit shaken by what I'd experienced. That child that was in the room. I knew it couldn't be real. It was just a memory. A dream that, only for a moment, managed to crawl into reality. Ivanka set herself down beside me. For a while, we just watched Nina. She wasn't exactly playing with the toys. It was more like she was observing them, inspecting every nook and cranny. She was occupied, though, so it wasn't a big deal. So, what do you do for a living, Suzanne? I pondered for a moment. I'm a musician, I sputtered. Really? Yeah, I play saxophone. Well,
That is interesting.
sure it is. It'll be even more interesting if you ask me to prove it. I don't play saxophone, by the way. I suppose that means you travel a lot then, being a musician. Oh, yeah. I've been all over the place. How does Nina find it? Must be a lot for kids so young. She handles it fine. I was still trying to find a place for Nina. An orphanage or something. But only when I was sure she'd be safe. You know, I always wanted to travel, admitted Ivanka. Is that right? As a girl, I've thought of my dream. Silly, really? I wanted to be one of those performers on cruise ship or something. So, how come you're here? I'm not sure exactly. I suppose life just has a way of leading you places. You can say that again. Is there a kitchen around here? I fancy a cup of coffee. Oh, don't worry, Miss Berry. I will sort that for you. Ivanka, please, let me do it. I'm not used to being waited on. I'll make one for you, too, if you want. Fancy a drink, kid? Nina shook her head, her eyes fixed on a brass spinning top. The second I got up from my seat, I felt as if I'd been flung out of my body. The world swirled and contorted, and then I was back on my ass. The hypothermia must have hit me hard, but I never get this ill. Never. How about I go make that coffee? Ivanka offered with a sympathetic smile. I spent the rest of the day in that study. It was calm, pleasant even. That all changed once everything rolled around again. The doctor was first to enter after us. He made no attempt to even acknowledge the existence of Nina and I. He just sat there, blankly, those teeth of his practically prying their way out of his face. Nina kept her eyes fixed on the table, refusing to look at him. I noticed a strange blotch on the man's collar. It looked like a splatter of blue ink, but something about it was off. It was thicker than ink, richer in color, too. Leonid stepped into the room and sat down opposite me. I didn't see a single wrinkle or aged imperfection as I followed the trail of fresh scar up his neck. When I finally met his eyes, I felt a sudden tugging, ever so slightly in the center of my brain.
I trust you have pleasant day,
The man asked, his voice smoother than before. Just swell, thanks, I answered quickly.
And what about you, little one?
He lurched towards Nina.
Have you been having fun?
The kid could only bring herself to glance at him briefly.
So then, get the girl to speak to me, eh?
Demanded Leonid. She doesn't talk. She just doesn't. Sorry.
It is fine. How is your recovery going?
Ivanka went to answer for me. I glared at her, and she returned to her food. My recovery's going well, thanks. No issues.
I should probably verify that for you. Medically, I mean.
Said Dr. Grant. His words were cold and deliberate. He was English, not Russian. I felt a pull at the bottom of my shirt again. Nina's little sign of protest. I'm sure we're fine, doctor. Thank you for your offer. Just like the night before, Ivanka cleared up once we finished and then took Nina away. The doctor retired to wherever he went, and I was asked to stay behind. Leonid ran his hand through his vibrant brown hair. Not a single fleck of gray. He stretched as he leant into his seat, unknowingly pulling at the stitches that held together the snaking wound on his neck. So, what do you want to talk about now? I inquired.
I am not sure,
He said.
I just like to chat.
I suppose it must be nice to talk to someone that you don't employ. Someone that doesn't owe you anything. The man chuckled to himself.
Well, that is not quite right. You do owe me something.
I raised a critical eyebrow. And what would that be?
I think we both know.
Leonid moved his hand beneath the table and placed it firmly on my thigh. No, I stated clearly, practically throwing myself out of my chair. Look, Leonid, I don't know what you think's going on here, but I don't feel that way, and I certainly don't owe you a thing.
For fuck's sake,
He grunted.
I look after you, keep you safe. You would be dead without me, and this is how you fucking repay me? Huh? I tell you what this is about. It is that fucking kid.
I'm sorry? The words tore out of my throat, ripping straight through the facade I'd built up.
Women are never as good once they have kids.
His eyes narrowed as he spoke, threateningly calm.
Especially not when they squeeze out little freaks like yours. She'd never say word. What is that about? Did you drop her on here or something?
Don't you ever talk about Nina like that, I said, much softer than I had intended. I once again felt hypothermia-induced vertigo when I threw open the door to my room, but I didn't care. Come on, kid, we're going. Nina sleepily started packing her stuff. I shoved my hand into my bag to retrieve the pressure gun, just in case. At first, I couldn't find the thing. I searched harder. Nothing. I emptied the whole fucking bag and it wasn't there. Nina, have you touched the pressure gun? The girl adamantly shook her head. Someone must have taken it. Shit! I opened the door again, not sure what else to do. Standing there, real as anything, was the child from last night. Over the intense terror, I felt the call of the Karashi as it tried to yank my brain out of my skull. Nina, too, felt the pull, but she didn't feel the fear. They communicated without words, using only vague, slight movements. The child was dressed in the same grimy gown Nina was wearing when I found her. They both nodded, then started to wander off down the corridor. "Wait!" I called out. I went to put my hand on the kid's shoulder, but I phased right through. It was like he wasn't there at all. The child carried on walking. So did Nina, and soon enough, so did I. We meandered through the spiraling hallways for what felt like hours. Every once in a while, the two kids would stop, have a brief, wordless conversation, then carry on walking. I spent the entire time trying to figure out exactly what the intangible child was. A ghost? Not real as far as I know. A hallucination? Unlikely. My best bet was that it had something to do with the Karashi. I didn't know much about them, other than the fact that they were aliens, they healed real fast, and that they have some sort of freaky telepathic bond. Maybe the child had used that bond to, I don't know, project themselves? Eventually, we reached a metal door, half open and slathered in red paint. Russian folk music wafted jauntily out. Dr. Grant hummed along with the tune merrily. I peered through the gap of the door to see Leonid laying out on the table unconscious. A medical mask obscured Grant's ever-protruding teeth. In one hand, the doctor held a scalpel. In the other, the pressure gun. Grant sliced open his patient's abdomen and began extracting all sorts of gore. I covered Nina's eyes, but I couldn't do the same for the other child. I didn't know what type of surgery was going on, but it didn't seem fun. The doctor, swaying slightly to the rhythm, removed a mask from a metal case. A fleshy hunk of something, colored the richest blue I'd ever seen. It looked like a liver, but it couldn't be. Besides it being the wrong color, it was too small. A wave of realization hit me. I looked back at the ghost boy. Grant carefully placed the organ within the gaping wound and used the pressure gun to seal it back up. This guy seemed pretty familiar with Karashi tech. Leonid's head lolled over, facing the door. At first, I thought it was just a sleeping movement. But then he opened his eyes and started screaming. "It's him! It's him! It is the boy! It's the boy!" Grant did his best to pin his patient down.
Leonid, you must stay calm. What are you talking about?
"It's the boy." He weakly pointed a finger in my direction, but not at me. Not at Nina either. He was pointing at the intangible child.
What are you talking about?
Said the doctor.
There's nobody there. Only your two guests who I strongly advise should leave immediately.
The child walked towards the operating table. Each step seemed to inject Leonid with a fresh dose of fear. This is all your fault, you and your fucking clinic. If you've come for revenge, little one, it is him you want. He is behind all this, not me. The doctor, unbothered, stabbed a hypodermic needle into Leonid's neck. Leonid didn't go back into unconsciousness, but he did fall silent.
It's a common side effect. The call of the cars can be overwhelming at first,
said Dr. Grant.
Of course, that's something you'd both know a lot about.
You work for the clinic, I presume. That means you're part of whatever's happening. I need answers. Grant moved his mask, his teeth scraped together slightly as he spoke.
I'm afraid I can't help you there. I'd breach a few contracts if I told you anything. It does seem you're also in possession of company property. I took the liberty of retrieving the Karshi weapon myself, but you'll also have to hand over the child.
He pointed the pressure gun at Nina to make his point clear. The heel of my boot slammed into his stomach. He folded. I knew what that pressure gun could do. I wouldn't let him disrespect us by pointing it in our direction. Leonid's barely functioning hand slammed a panic button. Red alerts flared up throughout the complex. That's our cue, I nodded to Nina, hooking the pressure gun from Garant's grip. I took one last glance as I ran out the room. The child had disappeared completely. I wish I had time to investigate, to stay behind and figure all this out. But if I wanted to stay alive, which I did, I'd have to wait until some other time to get my answers. We ran, the blaring alarms almost managing to muffle out the cluttering stomps of the encroaching security force. Nina shut off, disappearing around a corner. She was much faster than I was. The scarlet corridors stretched out in impossible directions. I didn't know where I was running to. I only knew I had to get out. Nina rushed into something much larger than her. A security agent, maybe. I whipped out the pressure gun and prepared to pull the trigger. I realized I was aiming at Ivanka. The woman helped Nina to her feet, but kept a tight grip on her hand. Ivanka, let her go. I am sorry, Suzanne. I was told to keep you here. If I let you leave, I will lose my job. Your job? That's what you're worried about? Of course it is, she shouted over the bellowing sirens. Do you realize how lucky I am? I will never find anywhere else that pays this well. For God's sake, forget about the money. You always wanted to travel, right? Come with us. If you help us out, the least we could do is let you tag along. There'll always be another job. What I'm offering you is a once-in-a-lifetime deal. The world's waiting. What do you say? She was silent for a second. Then she saw an armed man turning the corner and hurrying in our direction. Okay, fine, she agreed. Follow me. Soon enough, we were running again. Occasionally, I had to stop to hold back the security. I tried my best to minimize casualties. Up ahead, Ivanka commanded, motioning toward the opening doors of some sort of garage. Steel grating was slowly descending in front of an opening. A great big metal fuck you to my freedom. The pressure gun rendered it a mangled mess. Ivanka lifted Nina into a truck as I fired into the hordes of hired thugs. Leonid must have been paranoid if he's hired this many. The secret behind his operation, behind the clinic, must be pretty rotten if he's willing to go to this length to stop us. Okay, the girl is secure, Ivanka alerted. You tried your best to hold us back. You failed, I shouted. Ivanka looked at me confused. What are you talking about, Suzanne? You only helped us because we threatened to kill you. Since we're in a rush, I won't have time to follow through with my promise. I don't understand. You never said that. I thought we were going to get, right? I brought the back end of the pressure gun to the side of her head before she could say any more. She collapsed. She was digging herself a hole. I had to stop her. A few shots met the side of the truck as Nina and I swerved back out into the snow. I looked in the rearview mirror. One of the security agents checked Ivanka's pulse and nodded to his colleague. She'd be okay. I hope I did enough to make sure she kept her job at least. I couldn't afford to bring her along. We were desperate enough as it was. After a few hours of driving through the wilderness, Leonid's compound and everything that happened in it felt like a distant fever dream. I came so close to the answers, but was left with more questions. I'd find the truth one day. I was sure. Until then, I had to get back on the road. Even as I was driving, I still wasn't feeling 100%. I coughed something up. I wasn't sure whether it was blood, but it was blue. The richest blue I'd ever seen.